Sorry.
I want to start by thanking Private Internet Access VPN for sponsoring today's video. Today's video is the result of months worth of work and research and connecting the dots. So all I would ask is that you please click the like button, subscribe to the channel and share this video far and wide. This video actually acts as a follow-up to my Great Reset video that I made in 2020, a viral video that hit almost 800,000 views very quickly and was banned within 24 hours. In that production, I explained why the world was about to go into a period of chaos. I also outlined who was going to benefit or profit from that chaos. It was the world's richest corporations and banks. No surprise there. Some of the things that I forecast in that video have now come to pass even faster than I thought they would, and we are now in a period of chaos. These things include the Great Reset, a financial crisis, a refugee crisis.
This will be the 5th boat that has come in this morning. Scared and dizzy, they fall over each other to get out.
The collapse of small businesses, extreme weather patterns, the tracking, genetic editing and microchips in humans.
On my end, having it in my own hand.
Programmed the chip so that I have my COVID passport and on the chip.
And finally, a move towards central bank digital currencies, the ultimate form of enslavement. Going off of what happened to my video the last time I made a forecast like this, I probably suggest that you don't add this to your watch list and you watch it right away. Because when you come back to watch it, it might not be here. So let's start with a really important question today. And that question is, why would billionaires and the biggest hedge funds and wealthiest corporations in the world be interested and solely focusing all of their energy towards getting the world towards renewable energy? Why would they do that when the sole purpose and agenda of a corporation, a profit-making organization, is to make as much profit as possible? And the renewable energy industry definitely isn't more profitable than having complete control right now over all of the energy via the oil and natural gas industry. So what's going on here? This is one question we'll address in this video, as well as a couple others, and going into detail on who the main players and organizations are behind this movement. Also, this video is not politically motivated. I'm not a climate scientist. My focus in this video is going to be looking at the financing behind this big shift that's going on right now. So I'll leave the science behind the climate change issue to people far more intelligent than myself. And if you are an expert in this, feel free to drop a comment below as to what you think is going on. But I will be asking you some very uncomfortable questions today. Because remember what I always say, when there is a large financial incentive behind something, it usually attracts the worst of society and some less than moral characters. And in every single research documentary I've ever done that focuses around finance, that is exactly what I found each and every time without fail. So let's start with the 3 stages of change in the profit-making playbook. Then we'll look at 3 organizations, the WEF, the UN, and this new organization, GFANZ, or Z. Yeah, things are gonna get a little crazy in a minute, so get your tinfoil hat ready. Step 1 in the playbook then is to create urgency. No longer climate change, because change is a very soft word, but a climate crisis, or better yet, emergency. Because what does emergency say? You've got to act on it right now. This strategy has been very effective over the last 70 years. In fact, the most recent gentleman to actually go down this line was Al Gore. Many of you will be familiar with him.
From Paramount Classics comes a film that has shocked audiences everywhere they've seen it.
Who said that by 2014, so 8 years ago, may I just add, we would all be underwater because the ice caps would have melted.
This is what would happen in Florida. Around Shanghai, home to 40 million people. The area around Calcutta, 60 million. Here's Manhattan, the world.
Well, last time I checked, I'm not standing in water today. And actually, I did check the NASA reports before making this video, and it actually looks as though, if their data is correct, the ice caps have actually gotten bigger. Yeah, I'll leave you to fact check that one.
Think of the impact of a couple 100,000 refugees, and then imagine 100 million.
Actually, every single one of these "we will be underwater by X date" over the last 50 years have been incorrect. Not a great start or advertisement for this new agenda. But let's move on to look at an actual definition then of what carbon net zero actually means. And I'd like to start with my favorite, definitely the most unbiased and does not receive any form of corporate sponsorships or funding, the BBC. What will net zero mean for individuals? It won't be easy. Reaching net zero will involve moving from fossil fuels to renewable energy for our power, and abandoning vehicles run on petrol and diesel in favour of those powered by electricity and hydrogen. Gas central heating will need to be replaced by alternative sources such as heat pumps. Reaching net zero could also mean flying less in future and eating less red meat. Interesting. I wonder if there could be some form of an event that would stop people from wanting to travel or wanting to fly. Then, combined with perhaps some sort of geopolitical issue that causes a disruption to the food chain so that grains can't get to animals. Nah, that would never happen. Because human beings are experiential creatures, we actually learn by our own experiences. So if we see something that we've seen over and over again many times and nothing bad has really happened to us, we kind of take that thing and we put it in the same category as all the others. This is just natural. Of course, this isn't the response that the overlords want from us, so instead we have to create this form of change. Now, you can't do it really, really quickly or else this will cause suspicions. So what you do is you do this very, very slowly. We then have to introduce two forces. The first force is doubt. And the best way to create doubt is to hire the world's top experts in whatever the field is in question, who definitely will not receive any form of payments or exposure that could financially benefit them in any way. They have to be completely unbiased. The second thing we need to introduce then is fear, because fear is the greatest motivator of human beings. Without fear, we simply won't take an action that could potentially save lives. Because if the climate crisis or emergency does get as bad as they say, we will all be underwater within a space of years. And we don't want that. We want to continue living on dry land, I believe anyway. Before I move on to stage 2, I want to introduce today's video sponsor then, Private Internet Access VPN, which is a company that I personally use, and so does my community, for keeping us safe online. A VPN hides your IP address and then it encrypts your internet traffic so that hackers can't look at what you're doing online, they can't see your keystrokes or passwords that you're typing in. So when it comes to online security, there's one really easy thing that you can do to protect yourself online, and that is to get a Private Internet Access VPN. And it's so simple to use. It's just one button to turn it on, one button to turn it off. It's that easy, just one click. So if you're doing anything, especially financial online, accessing your pension, 401k, IRA, online banking, anything like that. This VPN will protect you against hackers actually looking at your internet traffic. Here's just a couple more benefits then of Private Internet Access VPN. They have more than 30 million downloads globally. They have thousands of VPN servers in countries all around the world, which is great to bypass geo-based content that may be locked to your region or websites that just won't work in your country. It works on various computers and operating systems from Windows to Mac, etc. They have 24-hour customer support. And if you're not completely satisfied with your purchase, they will give you a 30-day money-back guarantee. As always, I've teamed up with them today to get you an amazing discount on their services. So let's go to the shared screen now then. It's really simple to get started. Just head over to privateinternetaccess.com/Neil. I'm going to put this link in the description and also as a pinned comment below, just to make it easier for you to find. You're going to land on this page here then, and you're going to get this offer today for just $1.98 per month, a saving of 83%. You'll also get an extra 4 months free when you sign up for 3 years. So make sure to get this amazing deal today then. Protect your finances, protect your internet traffic online. And now back to the video. Okay, let's move on to stage 2 of this process then, which is to give the solution and censor absolutely anything to the contrary. And this solution is usually brought in by a huge multinational corporation who definitely does not have anything to gain financially by helping the governments of the world out. They are purely doing it out of the goodness of their hearts, as are the government officials themselves. They are also doing it out of the goodness of their hearts to serve the people. They definitely do not receive any form of financial compensation, and they definitely will not walk into a job with any of these organizations after the crisis is over. Actually, when I was doing my research on this project, I really wanted to get as many unbiased viewpoints as possible on climate change. Because as I said at the start, I'm not a climate scientist. I haven't spent thousands of hours studying this stuff. So all I can do is go off what I'm told and what I see in the textbooks and the reports online. However, I will say I found it extremely difficult to find both sides of the argument here. Pretty much everything was one-sided. In fact, I even went into one of the biggest bookstores in the country and I was speaking to the manager there and I said, look, great, you've got 8 books here on climate change and everything that's happening, but have you got anything to the contrary? And he said these exact words. My wife was there, she can verify it. He said, why would you want to read anything like that? And I explained why, and I talked about all sorts of other theories, and he said, yeah, again, and I quote, we're not allowed to stock that kind of material. It really dawned on me in that moment that there may be something a little bit strange going on here, because I wanted to learn about space weather, sunspots, solar activity, this mini ice age that we're apparently in, the heating cycles and cooling cycles of the Earth, and most importantly, the Greenland ice cores. I wanted to read the original study that was done a long time ago. However, after trying to find this study and really trying to find the original work, I was met with this statement. Numerous more holes have been drilled to get more accurate information for the past 2,000 years. Huh? But some of these original studies, and again, I'm not talking specifically about the Greenland ice cores here, but some of these original studies went back more than 10,000 years. Some go back as far as 100,000 years and talk about all of these cooling and heating cycles of the Earth. So it doesn't really make sense to me as a rational, logical data analyst, I guess we could say in this situation, to actually have less data and get a more accurate picture. That just doesn't make sense. 2,000 years is an absolute blip in the history of the Earth. So I don't really think we can base all of this information today just on the last 2,000 years. And again, I'm not saying all of the information is based on this, but I'm definitely seeing a lot of this quoted. Here's one of many images that I want to draw your attention to, and notice where we are right now. Yep, in a mini ice age. This is a fact. For anyone that wants to start shouting, oh, but who created that? Was he peer verified? And, you know, whatever else people are going to come out with right now. Now, look, I'm not saying that this proves that climate change is a big scam or a scandal. What I'm saying is, why is this image omitted from a lot of recent work? I'm sure there's a logical reason. I just don't know what that reason is. If you think you know why that is, please drop a comment below. I'm definitely interested to know from both sides of the scale here. But overall, I think we can agree that in order to give anything in the world validity, we have to look at all the data and all the science behind it, and not do what is very common at the moment, which is to omit anything to the contrary to online search results. Don't believe me? Go and check for yourself. Including some of these studies that were used in schools for decades have now been labeled misinformation. And I would argue that for intelligent, free-thinking individuals that like to really question things, this has actually done the opposite effect of what was probably intended. Because when you take the freedom away from people who like to think, it simply makes them resist whatever that authority is that is telling them how to think. So I guess we could say that a lot of the chaos in the world right now and the two groups of people, and this is what we're seeing right now, everything is very polarized. You don't really have many people in the middle. You're either on one side or the other. We could say that this has been artificially created by governments and the mainstream media. Stage 3 then is to make it law. This is always the final stage of any major change that wants to be brought in. Don't have the support of the public, you say? That's okay, because there's something called emergency powers. So what you do is you change the laws whilst using these emergency powers, and then you give the emergency powers back. But you don't change the laws back. But the key is that you've got to do this really, really quickly. And I mean quick, within a week. And then once it's done, then do something very positive for the public, because this way they won't start rioting in the streets. We've actually seen a lot of this occurring around the world in different countries over the last 2 years, and it's caused a huge amount of societal unrest and problems. Father against son, son against father, mother against daughter, daughter against mother. This is really not the kind of world that we want our children to grow up in. So now that we've established what the 3 stages are, let's take a more granular look then at these organizations that are involved. And often people say, but Neil, no one with any real authority or credibility is part of the WEF. So what does it matter? Yeah, you're right. No one with true power is even a member, apart from these people. Number 1, Joseph Biden, President of the United States. Justin Trudeau, PM of Canada. Boris Johnson, PM of the United Kingdom. Angela Merkel, former PM of Germany. Scott Morrison, PM of Australia. Jacinda Ardern, PM of New Zealand. Emmanuel Macron, President of France. Xi Jinping, China. Mario Draghi, PM of Italy. Hold on, this is a bit weird. What's going on here? Gavin Newsom, Governor of California. Jay Inslee, Governor of Washington State. Anthony Fauci. I've heard that name. Why do I know that name? Anthony Fauci. Oh yeah, he's that guy that just disappeared. Oh, and my favorite speaker who can't speak, Nancy Pelosi. Want me to carry on? Okay, well, here's the board of trustees. Al Gore. Hey, do you remember that guy? He was the one that said that in 2014, we'd all be underwater swimming, you know, with the polar bears or whatever. Mark Carney, UN Special Envoy for Climate Action, who we'll mention in a moment. Christine Lagarde, President of the ECB, the European Central Bank. Ngozi on screen, Director General of the WTO, the World Trade Organization. Oh, my favorite, Kristalina Georgieva, I covered her last time, Managing Director of the IMF. Chrystia Friedland, Deputy Minister of Canada, Lawrence Fink, CEO of BlackRock. Well, this is getting a little weird, Neil. Are you sure you're not making these names up? Go to the website and you can see all of this for yourself if you don't believe it. Okay, but what about corporations? Surely no serious corporations would be involved with the WEF, would they? Well, let's take a look. So we're on the website. Let's look at our partners here and let's just go through them. And this is just the letter A. Look at this, just the letter A. Let's look at the letter B then. Interesting who we've got on here. Some of the usual suspects. Yep, I knew this one would be on here. Oh, and again, what is the NASDAQ doing on here? If you just go through, you'll see a lot of familiar names. And where there's smoke, there tends to be fire in my experience. No surprise that Swift is on there as well. But one thing that might surprise you is we also have Ripple on there. We also have a lot of banks on here that you would know. Dozens and dozens, in fact. But I think it's probably best if I don't go through all these organizations. I'll leave it up to you to do your own research as to who these partners are. Now, I need you to bear with me for the next part of the video because this is where it does get a little technical. I want to read out to you an extract from the WEF Global Risk Report 2022, of which, if you're interested in knowing more, I did a 2-part video series on this just last month. The rise of stakeholder capitalism, shareholder activism, and increased appetite from companies to use environmental, social, and governance (ESG), remember this phrase, ESG, targets and metrics, coupled with ESG-based investments, is reshaping the financial and economic landscape. And an increasing number of organizations are committing to decarbonize, remember that word, decarbonize, their operations. Now again, I want you to think as we go through this as to incentives. Remember, there always has to be an incentive. Why do you go to work in the morning and sit at a job that for some people they may not like? If you weren't getting paid, would you do it? Absolutely not. So there always has to be an incentive for any action. As banks, insurers, and institutional investors are steering capital towards net zero, financial systems are rapidly emerging as critical enablers of the transition. A growing share of the $100 trillion bond market is mobilized for climate change solutions, and it is expected to reach the milestone of $1 trillion in annual issuances by 2022. Moreover, during COP26, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, this is what I've been alluding to, GFANZ, announced that over $130 trillion in private capital has been committed to carbon neutrality, enough to achieve net zero by 2050. Now, I just want to put something into context here. $130 trillion has been mobilized. Do you know what the world GDP is? I mean, the global GDP of the year. It's about 85 trillion. So for them to have mobilized $130 trillion, that's really something quite big right there. Okay, page 35 of the report. The goal of 1.5 degrees Celsius is so fundamental that societies need to be prepared to assume negative consequences of policies taken by government today to avoid the worst consequences tomorrow. Okay, just remember that a second. Remember what he's saying here. This includes job losses. What have I been talking about? Increased costs. Inflation, anyone? And geopolitical insecurity. Just remember when this report actually came out. Again, Nostradamus at work, associated with a disorderly transition. Only a socially just transition will make the consequences bearable for large part of societies, with governments needing to create policies and, here we go, social protective systems that help reduce the impact of those affected. When they talk about these social protection systems, they are talking about what I talked about 18 months ago, UBI, a universal basic income. How are they going to fund that UBI? You're going to pay for it. a rapid decarbonization would increase economic and societal disruption in the short term. So they're saying this is what's going to happen, while a slower pace with fewer short-term impacts would entail much larger costs and greater disorderliness in the long term. In other words, let me break this down. This is going to happen fast. And I mean real fast. I mean it's happening right now. I've taken so long to put this together. This has been, I could have made this video 4 months ago, and then people would have said, how did you forecast all these things? And yet by releasing it today, we are already about a month into a lot of the stuff that they're talking about. So what does this mean then? Well, it means we're going to see energy output of what they call fossil fuels, so oil and the natural gas industry. You're going to see output drop combined with energy rationing, which will probably begin somewhere in Europe. So again, we've got to ask, why would these organizations be pushing for decarbonization? What's in it for them? And what are the long-term consequences? Okay, here we go. Carbon credits. Aha. So this is where we're going. A new form of credit-based scoring system based on your carbon usage. And if you've ever seen the film In Time with Justin Timberlake, that's what this reminds me of. You have a certain amount of credits, and the poorer you are, the less credits you have. The wealthier you are, the more credits that you accumulate, and you can just offset, which is basically what they're saying. I mean, it's so ridiculous, some of these targets, in that you have 2 different paths you can take. And what a lot of corporations will do is they'll take the path of least resistance. They'll spend 47 years doing nothing, and then on the last year they can offset all their carbon.
Net zero by 2050 means that instead of being honest this decade by taking this path, we leave the being honest part to the last minute by taking that path instead.
Now, if the leaders of this conference that came out are anything to go by, I know how this is going to go down. If you haven't heard these stories, world leaders flew on their private jet, or should I say private jets because of their staff as well, to give a speech in Glasgow on climate change. How did they offset their carbon, you may ask? They offsetted it by the speech they gave, which will offset carbon in the future. Yeah, that's a true story. But what is ESG, you may ask? Well, I went to the most unbiased search engine in the world, which took me to the most unbiased, again, form of information in the world. I went from Google to Wikipedia. So here's what Wikipedia had to say the meaning of social governance was, because this is what we need to establish and distinguish first. What is corporate or social governance? So here's their definition. Corporate governance is defined, described, or delineated in diverse ways, depending on the writer's purpose. Writers focused on a disciplinary interest or context often adapt narrow definitions that appear purpose-specific. Thanks for clearing that up for me, Wikipedia. Okay, so let me give you a more accurate and non-gobbledygook definition that I got off a non-Google browser. Corporate governance is the system by which companies are directed and controlled. Okay. Now take that same meaning, not just to corporate, to what is the S? Social. Social governance. That means you and I. The next question is by whom? Who is going to be the one that governs everyone in this new carbon-based system? Well, according to these organizations, ESG could be considered a form of a corporate social credit score. Okay, here we go. ESG mandates are putting pressure on pension funds, and the pension funds then put pressure on companies, which is exactly what we saw as well in the Russia-Ukraine crisis that's going on. So we know this is effective. We know that companies pulled out because a lot of pension schemes put pressure on those companies. So now that we know that they want these pension funds and other investors to put pressure onto the oil and gas industry, what does this mean? It means less investment going in. A lot of oil fields will dry up and close, and it means less output going forward. In other words, we're going to see exactly what we're seeing right now, which is rising energy prices. Now let's look at GFANZ, which is Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. So this was launched in April of 2021 by Mark Carney, UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance. Here's a couple of clips then of Mark Carney speaking about this.
GFANZ covers the entire waterfront of finance. Banks, insurers, pension funds, asset managers, export credit agencies, as of today, stock exchanges, credit rating agencies, index providers, auditors. These are the best in finance that are committed to making the transition to net zero a reality. All members have followed rigorous internal governance processes to make their commitments that will reshape their business models to fund the sustainable transformations of our economies, to build a global financial system that's focused on achieving net zero, and dramatically reduce methane.
Wait a second. Doesn't the majority of methane come from animals? According to the website then, our members currently include over 450 financial firms across 45 countries responsible for assets of over $130 trillion. But again, I hear you ask, Neil, who are all of these organizations that are involved? This is another organization. This is the UN version. And here are the banks involved. As you can see, they are some of the largest banks in the world. I'm pretty sure many of your banks will be on here if you just look through this list. I want to draw your attention to a couple of other really important points here before we wrap up. Number one is this statement. The Alliance recognizes the vital role of banks in supporting the global transition of the real economy to net zero emissions. So they're basically saying, point blank, we are going to use finance, we're going to mobilize finance to make this transition, and we're going to do it quickly. So how are they going to do it? Well, let's move to the next point. The bank's first 2030 targets will focus on priority sectors where the bank can have the most significant impact, i.e. the most GHG intensive sectors. So this stands for greenhouse gas intensive sectors within their portfolios. What I think is not being said here, but is obviously meant, is that these institutions are going to put pressure on the corporations, the companies, the finance that they control in order to affect those industries. Within 36 months of joining, banks will set a further round of sector-level targets for all or a significant majority of specified carbon-intensive sectors, including, okay, here we go, get ready for this, agriculture. What are we seeing right now? Aluminium or aluminum. Again, what are we seeing with that sector? Cement, coal, commercial and residential real estate, iron and steel, oil and gas, power generation, transport. Ladies and gents, if you can't see the writing on the wall yet, then I'm not sure if I can spell it out much more. Every single one of these sectors mentioned here in the last few months has been really, really badly affected, and inflation has just run rampant. So let's conclude then, and let's ask, where does all of this lead us then? Well, stage one is to get all of the biggest financial organizations in the world on board. No point going after the little ones at this stage. You need the big ones because they will make the biggest impact. Stage two, if the carrot doesn't work, then use the stick. Get the incentive for these banks to join. Stage three, use this ESG criteria to put pressure onto the smaller banks and therefore the pension schemes and the funds in order to affect the investors. This will either put the fossil fuel companies out of business or force them to transition to green energy. Stage four, once you've got most of the big players on board and the pension funds, now go after the small banks, the small institutions, and even cryptocurrency platforms. Stage five, now take this into the whole social sphere and make it very, very difficult for corporations and businesses to get any form of financing unless they have the correct carbon or ESG score. Oh, you thought their accounts and credit score and everything else was important? No, this is going to replace that. And then stage six, and this is really where it comes to the end, is make it public. You want a mortgage, my friend, watching this? Well, let me just check your ESG or your carbon or social credit score. Oh, you want to live more rurally? Hold on, let me just check. You definitely don't have the right credit score for that kind of house. And besides, just like that film I mentioned, that's outside of your zone anyway. You simply don't qualify for a property in that zone. If you're wondering then what you're supposed to do about this whole situation, there is no quick guidance or advice I can give you here. What I would suggest is to make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, that you watch back over a lot of my videos and my forecasts. You can see where we've come from and then definitely where we're going. Thank you so much for watching today. Make sure to get your private internet access VPN. Please click the like button, subscribe, do all the usual stuff. Make sure to share this video far and wide. Apart from that, thank you for watching today. Take care, God bless. I'll see you next time.